Snow eats your footsteps and gives nothing back. A gate glitters with frost, lifts a little in the wind, and acts like it knows your name. Beyond it, a longhouse breathes lamplight through its seams, and the air smells of pine, resin, and wool. Fat. You've heard the loud stories about these people. Tonight you'll meet the quiet ones. Before dawn returns, you'll learn why a wall can be warm, why cloth is wealth, why a lamp that sputters once and steadies can calm the whole room. You'll taste winter bowls, and hear loom weights tap like a second heart. For now, walk slowly. You're safe here. The yard is a page of fresh snow, and you're writing in the neatest hand you've ever had. If a question arrives, how did a single room hold a family, animals, tools, and stories without quarreling? Let it settle beside you like a friendly dog. We'll answer it together, one warm breath at a time. The snow swallows sound. The gate waits with a lace of rime on the hinges. The night feels larger than the sky, as if the farmstead itself were holding its breath, so you'll notice the hush. You put a gloved palm to the timber and feel cold. That is honest, rather than cruel. Somewhere near, a dog rearranges itself into a circle and sighs. The universal punctuation for all is well. Your own breath forms its small cloud, and immediately forgets to be important. The yard is a courtyard of useful shapes. Stacks of firewood lean just enough to truss the ropes that hold them. A low storehouse stands on stout feet against damp, its door latch tied with a strip of hairy hide that still remembers the animal. Under the eaves, fish hang thin and patient, oiled by months of wind. Grain sleeps in bins with their lids pegged tight. The pegs shine where many winters have touched them. Everything here explains itself without boasting. We are ready. The dark can be long, and that's fine. You notice paths like pale brushstrokes connecting the buildings. One leads to the byre where warmth mutters through the planks, a soft company that you feel on your shins. Another curves to a small shed that smells faintly of tar and salt. The boat's winter house. Even grounded, the boat keeps half a mind. On the fjord, a sled waits against its keel, rope coiled for tomorrow's errands. A broken footprint shows where a child skipped, then remembered ice, then resumed skipping because children are stronger than advice. Under the ridge, the thatch is loaded with snow that somehow looks awake. The roof has learned its winter trick: hold what it can, shed what it must, and complain to nobody. Icicles hang like orderly teeth. The moonlight gives them a patient glow. The air tastes of smoke, clean and resin-sweet, the sort that sticks quietly to wool and will later remind you that warmth is a smell as well as a temperature. Your cloak scratches agreeably at the neck, a sound that belongs to winter and good work. You pause by the chopping block where an axe stands, married to the stump. The haft is polished by hands, not oil. Splits of birch and pine are stacked by size and personality. Quick burners for morning cheer, slow ones for deep night. A basket holds peat for when the wood wants a friend. A small shovel leans nearby to drag snow from the threshold when it grows ambitious. Each thing is located with the confidence of routine. You can feel how many evenings have rehearsed this exact scene. Past the woodpile sits a low bench with a hole of darkness beneath. You stoop and grin. A cat blinks from its private apartment, whiskers silvered with frost. It stretches, a minimal gesture with maximum meaning, and returns to being an elegant puddle of fur. The dog, satisfied that you are not a fox or a stranger with poor manners, tucks its nose under its tail. In this yard, even the animals practice economy, move when needed, rest when possible, watch with kindness. A figure emerges from the shadow, wool-wrapped and hat low, carrying a small armful of kindling, like an argument already won. You trade. A quiet greeting, the kind that recognizes the hour more than the stranger. Their boots make that gentlemanly crunch of snow that has agreed to hold. They step to the door, touch the latch to make sure it still feels like itself, and nod. Winter is not conquered here. It is negotiated with, and the contract is renewed at every hinge. The storehouse door is pegged and patterned with old repairs, each one a winter remembered properly. You run your fingers along dowels that fit like good thoughts. Inside, you can imagine the smells arranged in layers: dried fish, smoked meat, a hint of herbs hung to remind the broth of summer. Sacks of barley and rye sit squat and trustworthy. Nothing waits alone. Tools lean in pairs, ropes lie in easy coils. If a city is a library of solutions, this yard is a very good page. You step to the byre wall and press your glove to a board. Through it, you sense the slow, generous heat of animals at rest. A cow shifts spear, a sheep rearranges hay with the soft industry of a dream. Sources suggest this arrangement, people and stock nearby, with sensible engineering, as much as companionship. The warmth that leaks through keeps edges mild, and the rhythm of breath on the other side calms without permission. You are surprised by how quickly your shoulders listen. Somewhere, a latch answers a friendly hand from inside. Lamplight thickens at the seams of the longhouse door, turning the snow at your feet the color of butter. The wind takes a respectful step back. Behind you, the yard has nothing more to prove. In front of you, the part of the night that is human invites you in without fuss. The door lifts on leather hinges. Heat and lamplight fold you in. The inside is larger than it looked from the snow. Warmth steps forward like a polite host, and the air tastes of wood smoke, wool, and something faintly sweet, like a memory of summer flowers caught in the rafters. For a breath, your eyes rehearse the old trick of night vision, and then the room arranges itself into sense. Timber stands first. Great uprights rise like quiet trees that have agreed to live indoors. Crossbeams carry the weight with the calm of shoulders used to work. You can see where an axe bit long ago, and where a smoother hand taught the fibers to lie down. The roof is steep enough to shrug a storm, and at its highest, a gap keeps the peace between fire and lungs the smoke vent. Half open, a black rectangle that edits the weather. Scholars debate exactly how each region framed these houses. This one is a conversation between tree and craft that ended in yes. The central hearth glows like the village's small sun, not fierce, not sure of itself. Coals sleep in their red cave. A split log settles with a contented sound. The scent is peat and pine, a blend that speaks in vowels. Smoke lifts in a ribbon so thin it seems to hesitate over everything. Worth blessing, a pot, a set of wooden bowls, the braided line of onions near the edge of warm air. Above, rafters hold the soot of winters stacked like rings in a trunk. The darkness of them looks wise rather than tired. Along both walls, benches make the long room into a ship you could sail across the night. Bed boxes with lids serve as chests, by day and nests by dark, layered with skins and woven cloth. Hooks carry cloaks up where they can dry, dripping nothing but cold. A cradle dozes under a hanging charm made from bone and bright thread. When the room moves, it moves in a small, forgiving sway. Tools mind their manners on pegs, a ladle with a notch, an iron hook for the pot, a spoon carved so well it looks inevitable. Lamps do the delicate work. Shallow stones and clay boats drink tallow or fish oil and feed it back to the wicks in patient measure. Each flame trembles once, like a thought deciding to be said, and then holds steady, ringed by a halo that keeps faces in soft honesty. The light collects at cheekbones and spills over hands, making work look like story. You can hear it tiny fizzes at the wick, a private applause. Someone trims one with a sliver of bone. The flame narrows and clarifies. The floor is packed earth, swept until it reflects more care than soil. Runners of planks sit where feet prefer, smoother than conversation. At one end, a threshold lifts a hand against drafts. A door board leans ready for the deeper night, its inside face burnished by years of palms. The room is a set of circles that overlap without argument. Cooking circle, craft circle, sleep circle, story circle. Nothing is wasted. Even the smoke serves. It keeps pests less confident, dries the upper timbers, and seasons hanging food with a flavor that belongs exactly here. Someone sets a pot to a slower place in the heat, sliding the suspended chain another link. You admire the elegance of such control. No knobs, no dials, only knowledge, and the distance between iron and ember. The pot's lid lifts and releases a cloud that smells of barley and something green saved from autumn. A hand tests steam with the back of the wrist and nods the way a conductor nods at a faithful section of strings. Faces warm into visibility. A woman in a blue-dyed apron knots her hair with a strip of wool and shakes her hands once. The universal reset. A man at the hearth uses a forked stick to rebuild the fire in the neat geometry of people who enjoy neatness. A child sits on a bench with a little knife and the serious job of removing splinters from kindling. His tongue appears at the corner of his mouth in the international sign for concentration. They speak softly, not from rule, but because the room suggests it. Above the hearth, a drying bar carries herbs, gone feathery with age, their colors faded to the memory of green. Beside them hang lengths of something that was fish in summer and is now dinner in waiting, lacquered by smoke and patience. A net hugs the far wall like a spider's larger cousin. A spindle naps on the bench edge, where it will soon remember how to fall and be caught. Outside, wind passes its hand over the roof, and the timbers answer with a friendly creak, the building's spine adjusting without complaint. The sound could wake a traveler to worry, but in residence it invites sleep. Buildings in winter teach posture to people. Sit where the beam stops a draft. Stand where the smoke plume is honest. Walk the long axis, and you'll find the warm side without maps. The air near the floor is cooler. Higher up it keeps a story the roof told it at noon. In that layer, meat will cure and boots will wake themselves in the morning without becoming stiff. You are invited to hang your cloak on a peg that seems to know your height. When the wool leaves your shoulders, the room holds you rather than the garment. Your fingers are offered a small basin for rinsing. The water is not warm, but it isn't cruel. A towel of woven cloth accepts your hands and makes them better hands. It smells faintly of soapwort and smoke. You take a seat near the midline, where the lamp shows you to yourself, and the hearth shows you to your bones. From here you see how light shapes the house into zones. The far corners are not ominous. They are storage for tomorrow's effort. Bench lids have a way of opening as if they were greeting, not revealing. A keyring hangs on a peg, iron ovals, that clink with modest authority. When they move, the room notices. A dog pads in, pauses long enough to check everyone's ankles for news, then turns twice and curls in the warm ellipse of firelight. Its sigh is contagious. A cat claims the bench end that has hosted 15 generations of cats and gives you a look that says, "You may remain. You may remain." The reassurance arrives without words. You're safe here. You tilt your head back and follow the smoke's writing into the vent. On a clean night the stars would peep, but this evening snow has the script. A pale suggestion of sky glows beyond the gap. Still, the draft is right, taught by the angle of the roof and the habit of the house. A fresh log takes gently. The ember bed approves by brightening where the bark meets memory. The longhouse has tricks you'll learn by doing. Which plank complains? Which peg sticks and must be coaxed? Which lamp likes its wick leaned exactly so? A home that is one room is not simpler. It is more honest. Everything knows everything, so peace depends on rhythm. You can hear it gathering, the rustle of bowls, ajar up the quiet footfalls of people who have rehearsed these evenings. Enough to take them slow. Steam writes a small story on the air. Bread knocks softly against the board as the knife decides where to fall. A wooden ladle slides through barley thick broth and returns with the season cupped inside it. The pot has been talking for an hour, the kind of talk that requires patience. Rather than opinion, it hangs from an iron hook that remembers exactly which link gives simmer. The lid tilts a finger's width to keep the soup honest. Every time someone nudges the chain, the fire answers by changing from assertive to agreeable. You can feel how many winter nights have coached this choreography. Ember, pot, hand, taste, repeat. Bowls are set in an easy constellation around the hearth. They are wooden, warm to the touch, and slightly oval from years of being exactly what they are. A spoon knocks the rim of a clay jar with the pleasant sound of soon. A basket of bread is offered with the quiet pride of work finished well. The slices are thick, the crumb coarse enough to explain the field it came from. Barley and rye, mostly sturdy grains that laugh at weather and ask little in return. Sources suggest loaves could be leavened or flat, depending on habit and haste. Tonight's is a small risen miracle, the kind that makes steam when torn. Salt comes from a little horn with a stopper that sticks in the cold. It's sea bright and careful. Dried herbs crumble between fingers, summertime stored like a secret. The first ladleful finds your bowl with a generosity that manages to be both modest and sincere. Barley pearls have softened into kindness. Turnip and a ribbon of cabbage have given themselves to the broth without complaint. A piece of preserved fish smoked in earlier months until the air learned its name is rehydrated into usefulness. The pot offers no boasts, only proof. You lift the spoon and the steam touches your face before the flavor does. Wood against lip is gentler than metal, the warmth traveling not just through the broth but through the handle into your hand. You can taste the house, the soot that seasons the rafters, the clean resin of pine, the barley's quiet sweetness. A pinch of salt sharpens the story. The herbs lift it without turning it into a speech. Bread waits for its roll. Its crust has a seriousness, but the inside is forgiving. It prefers to be chewed rather than interviewed. You dip and listen to the soft argument between broth and crumb broth wins, but only because bread chooses to let it. Someone passes a dish with a white, thick spoonful of cultured dairy. Skyer, they say, pleasantly tangy, like a soft reminder that summer existed. You add a bit to the side of your bowl, and it steadies everything the way a good friend steadies a laugh. Around you the room arranges itself into a low, shared rhythm. Children are served first without ceremony. Elders are served first without remark. The dog pretends not to hope, and is rewarded for its ethics with a crust end. A cat places itself where the laptubal distance is statistically favorable. Laughter happens at volume lamplight. There is ale, watered to kindness, and warm water for those who want the comfort without the story. A jug goes round with the lid loosely on, the handle polished by 1,000 passes. Haste is the only absent guest. You eat in a tempo learned from seasons, with pauses that let steam, speech, and swallow take polite turns. This is not a feast in the traveling tale sense, and that is the nice part. It's the household's version of enough. Preserved foods miss their summer selves, but don't make a scene about it. A sliver of smoked meat appears in a second pot and dissolves its good manners into the broth. Someone produces a jar of something berry and bright, saved for evenings when the day needed color. A fingertip amount on the bread makes January remember July with a smile but no drama. You watch how the tools join the conversation. The ladle's bowl is darkened from years of dipping and drying. The wooden spoon you hold bears to tiny repairs where a split once began and was persuaded to stop. A clay pot shows a line of slip where its maker pressed a thumb. A print from a person you'll never meet who nevertheless has cooked for you tonight. The clink of spoon on rim, the hush of steam, the hollow knock of crust against tooth, these are winter's instruments. The music keeps time with the house. Stories begin in fragments and then become the meal's second course. A neighbor saw fox tracks that tried to look like cat tracks and was not fooled. A sled runner needed smoothing and now sings when pulled, which is lovely until it isn't. Someone remembers a past winter when the snow was taller than a child who is now taller than the door. Nobody uses the word hardship. Work is described as a series of chores that behave themselves, and the room agrees. Your second bowl is not necessary and therefore perfect. The broth has deepened. The barley has become confident. The herbs have stopped showing off and settled into harmony. You tear another piece of bread and feel the crumb shed a few seeds onto your palm. Little commas that say the sentence will continue for as long as it needs to. You eat those commas too. If you listen between spoonfuls, you catch the pantry's presence in the conversation. Fish once hung under the eaves. Now it is part of you. Grain slept in a bin. Now it tells your muscles to relax. The storehouse, the drying bar, the salt from the coast, they arrive at the table in small ways that add up to trust. A household is a series of doors opened at the right time. Children begin to tilt, holding on to bowls with both hands in the universal effort to stay awake for one more story. A mother breaks a slice into little pieces the size of ounces and places them like stepping stones across a plate. A father blows on a spoonful for a toddler who will forget they ever needed help and then remember it as a warm idea in a cold month. You take the last spoonful and it is better because it is last. The pot sighs as someone drags it to a cooler. Place in the fire. Bowls are wiped with bread, so good manners aligned with good cleaning. A jar lid fits with a soft twist that promises tomorrow. Dishes are rinsed in a basin with water that has met the hearth but not the boil. The wooden spoon makes a round, contented sound on the clay as if thanking it for the partnership. The room's light seems brighter after eating. Though the lamps have not changed, maybe your eyes have, maybe warmth. Let's lamp halos widen. People shift from the circle of eating to the arcs of work without losing their seats. The dog stretches, accepts a new position, and performs a yawn that convinces a child to perform one too. The hearth resettles with the tiny negotiations of ash and coal. Outside, the snow speaks within its own language. Inside, hands are already reaching for what comes next. A thread falls and doesn't. Gravity pulls. Your hand disagrees, and together you make a tiny river of wool that flows upward. The spindle spins like a tame comet and hums a quiet yes. In the lamplight, each fiber decides which neighbor to hold, and the decision is called yarn. Someone shows you the stance. 1 foot half forward, elbow loose, shoulders patient. The wool sits warm against your wrist, lanolin slick, carrying the soft, clean scent of sheep and winter air. A tuft is teased from the mass and introduced to twist the way to shy people are introduced at a calm party. The drop spindle takes the invitation and spins, thin whirl flashing once, then blurring. You draft a little, let twist climb, draft again. It's a tiny dance with gravity for music, and the beat is the spindle's heartbeat on the string. The distaff is a polite bundle on your forearm, combed locks lying like hair that made an effort. Earlier, the wool was carded too, paddles brushing clouds into alignment, teasing burrs and seeds out with domestic diplomacy. If the fleece was washed, it was done in warm water with plant soaps and patience. If it was not, the natural oils now help your fingers learn, calm. Your thumb and forefinger pinch and open, pinch and open. The simplest gate the world ever built. Twist wants what twist wants. Too much, and the thread coils like a spring with opinions. Too little, and it sighs back into fluff. You learn to feel the exact moment before boastfulness, the point at which the fibers agree to move as one, without becoming stubborn. When the spindle drops near the floor, you arrest its fall with a practiced hand, wind on the length you've made, and send it spinning again. It is soothing because nothing dramatic should happen, and nothing does. Around you, the room adopts the tempo. Conversation rounds its corners. A loom weight taps the timber leg, a soft metronome. Wick light catches on the spindle's turning, and makes long ovals of brightness that slide up the polished shaft. The dog, wise to fiber, decides your lap is a bad idea tonight, and chooses the warmer lips by the hearth instead. Your breath matches the spindle. Turn, draw, pause, breathe. Sources suggest winter belonged to this rhythm as much as to broth and bread. When fields slept, hands worked small seasons at home. Spinning fed the loom that fed the sewing that fed the household, and, often, trade. A ball of single-ply yarn grows at your knee, simple and honest. Later, 2 singles can be given a second spin in the other direction, plied into a stronger partnership. Twist meets counter-twist, tension eases, thread relaxes into promise. Near the wall, the warp-weighted loom wakes with a ladder's patience. The frame leans like a thoughtful friend, bottom open, top hung with a beam that carries the warp. From that beam, long threads descend like a rain you can count, each group tied to a small stone or clay weight that keeps them straight and serious. The weights are warm from the room and cool in the hand, stamped with thumbprints from a maker whose day is still here in the surface. When they touch the plank at the base, they click in a rhythm gentle enough for sleep. You step close, and the loom becomes a map. Warp threads are arranged in 2 families, every other thread lifted by a heddle made of string, each heddle knotting into a rod. Raise one set, and a shed opens her mouth for the shuttle to pass. Lower it, raise the other, and the mouth changes its mind. The shuttle, a narrow boat of wood, carries the weft through. A beater flat, like a small sword. Sometimes just a smooth board presses the new line into the fabric, with the satisfied thock of a job completed. The pattern is muscle memory before it is cloth. Lift, pass, beat, change. Lift, pass, beat, change. The weaver's face belongs to the work. Calm gaze, small smile meant for nobody in particular. A border of simple diamonds is forming at the cloth's lower edge, not fancy, just precise. Dyes live quietly here too. A weft that once soaked in madder carries a warm red like thoughtful brick. Another, brushed with woad, keeps a blue that behaves. Onion skins can offer a yellow if you ask nicely. Bark and lichens contribute in their own time. Scholars debate recipes. The house remembers what works. You are invited to try 2 passes. The shuttle fits your hand like a story told twice, but better the second time. You send it through the open shed. Watch the yarn arc, then settle. The beater presses. The cloth tightens into itself without drama. Again, each line becomes history. You could wear the loom weights give a small ceremonial tap when a thread takes up slack. The sound is nothing and everything. It is what keeps the room in time. Cloth from this loom will be more than garment. It will be blankets, sales cousins, straps, sacks, bands for binding tools, wrappings for jars. Some will be fulled after weaving, washed, warm, and coaxed with soap and steady pressure until fibers buckle and embrace, thickening into fabric that shrugs at wind. People used what the house allowed, plant suds, clean water, and, sometimes, other household solutions with a bit of bite, handled with know-how, rather than fuss. The point is kindness. To make cloth contend to meet whether a child touches the hanging warp and gets the forgiving lecture every child receives. Yes, like a harp, but let it sing later. Another child pumps the treadle substitute of footbar. On some looms the weavers nod, proud to be counted in the choreography. Small hands help in safe ways. Small pride grows large and useful. On the bench nearby, spun yarn is looped around a swift stick and counted into skeins. Numbers here are not tyrants, they are neighbors. A set length, a set count promises to a future pattern. Fingers check evenness, reading the thread like braille. Occasionally a thin spot receives a second twist between finger and thumb, a quiet rescue. The skein is tied at 4 points, then hung above to relax in the warmth. It turns slowly, magnificent in its ordinariness. Lanolin softens your skin until your palms feel like they belong to someone more competent. You inhale and catch that unmistakable, cleananol scent that homes carried before bottles replaced fields. It's friendly and persuasive. It suggests your hands are now part of winter's grammar. The spindle slows. You arrest it. You smile at the new length wound onto its shefter, paragraph drafted from fluff dot in the near corner. A basket holds combed locks in tidy rows like a snowy field in miniature. Another basket is different. Scraps of older cloth, edges trimmed, from last year's sewing. Nothing truly leaves the room. Everything waits for a second life, as patch, braid, or binding. A coat remembers a blanket, remembers a bolt, remembers a flock, remembers grass under summer. This kind of memory sleeps lightly and is easy to wake. The room keeps a quiet joke. The loom is big but has no voice. The spindle is tiny and purrs. Work runs on their agreement. You feel a softness in your chest that may be pride or simply the relief of doing one small thing well. Outside, snow makes its case against the door with polite pressure. Inside, a length of cloth gains another inch and doesn't even celebrate. The celebration is implicit in warmth held, wind excluded, backs covered, babies wrapped. Neighbors traded within spring. Someone ties off the day's last pick and tucks the shuttle to bed on the beam. The loom weights sway once like bells that have already rung. Your spindle gets a loop slipped over its hook to keep it from wandering. And the distaff is wrapped so the wool will not collect news when you aren't looking. A lamp sputters a warning, then steadies when the wick is trimmed. You can feel your thoughts imitating it, settling into a narrower, brighter line. You flex your wrist, and it thanks you politely. Across the room, shavings whisper from a plane, as a bench is wiped with a sleeve. From wall to wood the carver clears his bench, and your evening changes tools without raising its voice. The bench looks like a small harbor at low tide, everything set down where the water of work once was. A curl of shaving holds its own shadow. A knife lies on folded cloth like a quiet promise. Your hands, warmed by wool, are ready to learn wooden manners. A plane draws toward the chest, and the grain answers with a whisper. The shaving coils into a ribbon the color of toast. The bench keeps what falls, a map of tasks, pale chips, a dot of pitch, a stray thread from the loom. The utility knife is simple and trustworthy. A blade with a spine thick enough to preach patience. Its handle remembers years of palms and directs yours into the right grip. You test the edge against spruce, and it answers with the softest yes-no snag, no brag. The carver shows how the thumb becomes a moving fence, how short strokes are safer. Then heroic slashes. The knife draws a spoon from a block by choosing what will remain. Bone weights in a shallow tray, warm-looking even before you touch it. Ribs and leg pieces have been sawn into plates for toggles and buttons. When the awl goes through, There's a soft, particular click bone, remembering it was shaped by life, and doesn't mind being shaped again. A bone needle passes from a roll of cloth into your palm, as if it has been waiting for this evening. Antler has its own mood dancer. Patient, eager for detail. Someone files a toggle that will fasten a winter cloak in one motion. The shape is modest, a narrow waist to catch the loop, ends rounded so cloth will not take offense. A strip of sharkskin wakes the surface to a matte shine. Iron joins like a quiet neighbor who brought usefulness instead of a story. A pouch opens onto small rivets made by a smith who treats heat as grammar. These fix what wood alone cannot. A bucket hoop that wandered, a knife scale that needs holding, a skate that wants to stay threaded to its board. You watch a handle repair, rolled holes reamed, new birch scales pinned lightly until the metal mushrooms just enough to stay. A drop of oil seals the truce. The smell at the bench is a cord, pine sap, iron, leather dressing, a ghost of smoke. Apprenticeships here last seconds and repeat forever. Do not chase a knot. Come from the other side. Do not argue with grain. Bargain with it. Small jobs run through the evening like beads on a cord. A peg for the door latch is shaved to fit. It answers with that seated sound that means sleep will be uninterrupted. A hinge pin gets dressed with fine charcoal and fat, then returned to its eye, where it turns with quiet pride. A sled runner, scored last week by an ambitious rock, is persuaded into smoothness with a plane and a leather burnisher. Maintenance is a culture here, not an afterthought. Winter isn't off-season. It's when the farmstead repairs itself into the future. Keep edges true and they give you calm. Neglect them and they write their lesson on your fingers. You hold the whetstone at the angle many winters taught. Pull the blade until grey slurry forms a small river of improvement. Leather arrives with its own weather. A strap is cut along the grain of strength. A belt hole measured against the owner's real waist, and not their ambition. An awl opens a path. The bone needle and waxed thread travel it with even patience. A smear of oil erases dryness and writes gratitude. You try the winter classic. A spoon. The blank is split, the outline scribed with charcoal, and the knife does its kindly subtraction. Thumb pushes, wrist listens. Curls of wood fall like sleepy commas. The hollow is coaxed, not dug. You stop the tool just before the wood asks you to. A burnisher antler again loops across the grain until fibers settle. The small shine is a promise to soup. On the shelf. Jars keep tiny allies. Chalk for polishing, soot for marking, glue that smells faintly of hooves and patience. A cloth bag hides offcuts, bone slivers, antler triangles, curls of birch because future problems enjoy small, tidy solutions. The evening keeps its tone. Work never rises above conversation. If a tool bites, the room offers a silence that says, "We've all done that," then carries on. If a fix refuses to fix, the piece is set aside without drama and joins a queue. It is a dock. Things arrive, are mended, and set off into usefulness again. At last, the knife is wiped and tucked. The awl capped, the bone tray covered, so dust will find another pillow. Chips are brushed into the basket for kindling. Shavings go to someone who promises to start the morning blaze with elegance. Hands are rinsed in a little warm water. The skin reads oil and wood and calls it good. A door latch tests its new peg and approves with a soft click. A hinge turns in fresh patience. The sled runner catches lamplight and returns it like a path in miniature. The bench exhales. A figure by the far wall lifts a bar. Cold air draws a narrow line across the floor and wakes the edge of your boots. A door lifts cold air. You step to the byre partition, where the night is warmer than you expect, and a different kind of breathing fills the room. Warmth is coming from the wrong direction. The door opens to cold, but the floor gives back heat. The wall beside you hums a little. A low animal music traveling through timber, as if the building were wearing a heartbeat. You step into the byre and the night changes color. Lamplight thins to a honey wash, and the air gathers a sweet barn note. Warmed by breath, wood warmed by work, wool warmed by wool. On the other side of the partition, the household continues in talk. Here, large neighbors sleep and edit the darkness with their breathing. A cow shifts, the sound soft and decisive. Sheep make that comfortable, conversational rustle that says nobody is worried about wolves or weather at this hour. This is the warm wall. the quiet invention. Sources suggest many farmsteads joined living space and byre across a stout partition, or under one roof, people on raised benches and plank floors, animals on packed bedding a step lower. Heat leaks through boards and posts, not enough to crowd, just enough to keep edges gentle. You can feel the gradient along your shins, the way a river of comfort runs from stall to seat without asking for thanks. It is central heating by friendship. The floor under the animals is layered straw or rushes, and what the season provides renewed, turned, and carried out when weather allows. We will be polite about the details. Chores are handled with practical regularity and no drama. What matters tonight is how carefully the space is arranged to breathe. A narrow vent near the eaves gives bad air a polite path out. Slatted gaps near the partition's base allow cooler air to slide in from the door and move across the floor like a courteous guest. Above, the house's smoke finds its route out through the roof gap and, in passing, dries timbers into an honest brown. Generations noticed that smoke discouraged tiny freeloaders. The effect is humble and helpful, not theatrical. Your palm on the partition reads two temperatures at once. The boards are warm toward the byre, room cool toward the hall, the difference meeting inside the wood like a handshake. The posts are glossy where many hands have agreed on them as good places to lean. Iron pegs stand like punctuation. Here, a halter rests. Here a lantern hangs. Here a bucket waits for morning. You watch a cow's side rise and fall. Each exhale writes a small cloud, and the cloud disappears as if absorbed into a book of winter rules. The beasts carry summer in slow memory. Grass turned into warmth, cud turned into milk when the world has less to offer. Tonight, milk can wait, warmth cannot. The byre keeps it and gives it away in the same breath, on a beam. Tools that prefer this air drowse, a wooden rake with a repaired tine, a scoop like a ladle for straw, a brush whose bristles have learned the shape of a hide, a bucket's hoop gleams where new rivets were set earlier at the bench. It has been returned to its place like a word corrected back into a sentence. Someone long ago bored a tiny peephole through a board at shoulder height. From the living side, a quick look can check a stall without opening a door. It is the architectural version of "Are you good?" asked kindly. The animal's presence changes the acoustics. Hooves on board make a soft, spaced-out drum. A sheep snuffles and returns instantly to woolly consensus. A calf, startled by a dream with no teeth, nudges its mother and is reassured by a breath that smells of hay and warm air. If you listen hard, you can hear water settling in a trough, the small lapping as surface tension negotiates with patience. Nothing here is loud. Everything is exact. Raised floors in the living area help your back more than your feet know to say. The step up keeps drafts low, lets storage slip beneath, and steals a little extra warmth from the byre's side. Sit with your heels on the plank and your hands around a cup, and you become a clever part of the system, a heat exchanger with gratitude. Scholars debate layouts by region. Some longhouses place the byre at one end, some along one side, but the logic repeats. Keep life together, let warmth travel, make winter manageable without scolding the weather for being itself. You walk the line between stalls. A lantern on a peg throws a steady oval that moves with you. It finds the gloss on a horn and leaves it there. It finds a brand new peg and blesses the grain you released this evening at the bench. A cat weaves ahead, like a small, opinionated shadow. The dog comes no farther than the threshold. Treaties are respected. A window the size of two hands gives the night a careful look. A snow line against the byre wall. Drift managed with good timing. No need to fetch the shovel at this hour. You can see the storage loft above you through gaps in the timber. Bales of hay are stacked with a sailor's neatness, their edges cut square by someone who finds peace in right angles. Loose seed rattles faintly when the rafters settle, an accidental lullaby. You notice smoke's afterlife on these beams of varnish of seasons. The smell is not sharp, it is civilized. It keeps insects self-conscious and helps wood resist the damp. People knew this without writing it down. Buildings become textbooks when enough winters turn their pages. A small alcove holds the household's night water, covered and set apart with care. There are rules here, observances that make dignity easy for everyone, and they are followed as naturally as breathing. You admire the tidy mat laid by the byre door, where boots can step and lose their snow before rejoining the human side. The mat is woven from something tough, and its pattern is cheerful in the way good function makes color look braver. Someone joins you, touches the nearest stall rail, and listens the way music teachers listen, hearing what you ask. Contentment. They answer, and smile at how city ears always ask for the tune's name. A hand checks a halter buckle, not because it will fail, but because habit deserves practice. A second hand checks a roof post where it meets a sill, feeling for any complaint that snow might have placed there. The post is quiet. The sill approves. The house keeps the score and the beat. Back at the partition, a shuttered hatch opens with the slow courtesy of well-oiled wood. Warm air drifts across your knuckles. You imagine the children on the other side reaching sleepy fingers through on nights when they wanted to hear the byre chorus. Many animals, one breath. Many people, one room. The wall is boundary and bridge. Like most good boundaries, before you go, you press your ear to the board once more. You learn the frequencies, the rumble of a heavy sleeper, the hush of sheep repositioning, the tiny clock of a drip correcting itself in a corner. You carry those sounds with you. They are the house's second lullaby. The lamp is turned low. The latch settles. Your boots find the plank that warmed your heels on the way in. The door lifts and closes as if taking a polite bow. The cooler air of the hall surprises you by feeling kind rather than thin. On the other side of the warm wall, a log accepts its fate with a small sigh and sends a fresh stripe of orange across the ceiling. Back by the hearth, stories begin to move like light. Asterisk, a small sound orders the room. An iron ring touches a belt and gives one neat clink. The sort of note that makes bowls tidy themselves and children remember where pieces belong. The keys are few and eloquent. A long shank for the storehouse, a shorter one for a chest where cloth sleeps, a tiny warded thing for a box of needles and coins. They hang beside a knife and bone comb at a woman's hip, the practical jewelry of someone who runs the weather indoors. Sources suggest such bundles often signaled household authority. Here, they simply behave like it. Lamplight warms the iron. When she moves, the ring ticks, and the room aligns without fuss. Bench lids close. A cloak goes to a peg. A child's game waits. Order here is not scolding. It is kindness that lets the night lie down. You're safe. Near the door, the threshold keeps its appointment. People step over with a tiny pause. Mud knocked free, snow brushed into obedient drifts. Some houses offer a pinch of grain or a touch to the lintel, a greeting to luck, and to builders whose hands still live in the beams. A beeswax lump wrapped in linen rests on a shelf. It sweetens the air and serves many small offices. Thread so seams mind their manners, persuading a wick, sealing a folded note, warmed between fingers. It smells like summer politely visiting winter. Keys travel on purpose. The long one lifts and slides into the store chest lock. The lid rises like a sentence, finishing well. Inside, folded cloth breathes soapwort and patience. Plain weaves in practical tones, a border pattern from winters when time was generous. Sachets of herbs sit in corners to discourage freeloaders. The key returns with a click that equals enough for now. Household rites live in repetition more than ceremony. A bowl of water by the hearth is refreshed. A spoon rests across it with the handle toward the door. A small cup stands on the mantel with a sip saved for absent friends. It is changed before. Sourness can arrive. A hand taps the door beam lightly. A hello to the timber that keeps snow obedient. Customs varied by valley. Better to say, many houses kept small ways of inviting luck to behave. On the other side of the warm wall, animals breathe. Here the wall answers as order rather than noise. You can read the plan like a map. Clear path down the middle. Tools too. Pegs shaped by their edges. Firewood in ranks that look like a promise. The plan is choreography more than rule. From time to time the door is lifted, so the house can trade air with the dark. Snow on the threshold is parted neatly. 2 pairs of boots stand just inside. Toes pointed in so they can be entered quickly. Toes pointed out are for dawn. You are given small dignities to tend. The beeswax kisses a thread before it passes a stubborn seam. The seam decides to behave. A hinge receives a touch of fat and forgets last week's storm. A peg at the partition is tested and answers with that wooden note, meaning still strong. Houses respond to care with better sleep. The ring finds a hook by the bed box and rests within reach. A younger person watches like an apprentice, not to seize power, but to learn its temperature. Tomorrow they will take the key to the storehouse and return it with the right weight of grain removed and the right kind of silence kept. Authority. Here is steadiness and checked lists you keep in your head. Talk turns to names and paths. Whose meadow borders which stream, which fence wants a new stake when thaw begins. Elsewhere such talk might be law. Here it is, memory with edges. Sources suggest rules often lived in mouths before paper. You can hear that archive breathing by the hearth. A lamp sputters and remembers itself when the char is pinched away. Your thoughts imitate it and narrow to a calmer flame. The lamplight finds wool hems and makes them tied at ankle height. Cloth whispers against benches as people settle. The little dog performs its rounds and curls in the warm ellipse. The cat chooses a chest and then chooses to ignore you. Everyone keeps their office. The keys speak again, barely, when a small box is opened to fetch dice and a carved board. Business is paused, not ended. The iron tick sounds like permission for leisure. A space near the lamp is cleared with casual precision. A folded cloth becomes a tablecloth because it feels right to be kind to wood. Pieces are set out in two small armies that will never draw blood, only patterns. Before play begins, the threshold gets one last sweep. The door settles. The ring on its hook makes a sound like a pebble in a deep bowl and then goes still. Beeswax is wrapped and returned to its linen. Wool hems swish as people lean in. The room holds itself at that pleasant attention that belongs to games and stories and weather behaving. You glance toward the warm wall. It hums a low agreement through the timber. Keys, rites, and habits have tightened the night into something that will hold. Your breath adopts the house's tempo, unrushed, accurate. Dice weight, carved from bone that once listened to a different heartbeat. A board game unfolds beside the lamp, and the next kind of quiet begins. A soft click and the night pays attention. A carved piece touches the board, the way a fingertip touches a shoulder lightly, with meaning. Someone laughs under their breath, the kind of laugh that never leaves the circle of lamplight. The board is a square stitched from lighter and darker wood. Lines make a grid that invites polite trouble. In the center sits a larger piece that gleams where many thumbs have encouraged its shine. Around it, smaller men wait, pale against dark, dark against pale. You recognize the pattern of tension without knowing the rules. That's half the fun. Henefitov, they say table games of the North, though variants carry different names and local quirks. Scholars debate the exact moves in different centuries, but the mood is steady. One side escorts a king to safety, the other practices the ancient art of not so fast. The board rests on a folded cloth to keep it from sliding, and the cloth has a few burn marks where lamps were set too close in winters past. A player places their forefinger against the king's head and gives it a ceremonious nudge, as if to say, behave. The defenders breathe in, the attackers breathe out. The game begins without fanfare. Movement is clean straight lines along the grid. No diagonals, no leaps. Your opponent slides a piece, 3 spaces, and sets it down with that soft wooden note. That feels both polite and brave. In this family's rules, a capture happens by encirclement. Trap an enemy between 2 of yours, and the middle piece comes off the board. It is strangely courteous as removals go, almost pastoral. A corner square counts as a kind of sanctuary for the king, but only if the board agrees, and tonight the board seems moody. You try a line of defenders that looks clever until someone, with more winters in their shoulders, smiles, and moves a quiet counter that reveals you have built a doorway, not a wall. Bone dice lounge nearby in a little cup, cube-cornered and glossy with age. They will have their turn later. For now they act as audience, their pips like eyes. A child touches them with the reverence people give to old tools and toys. Dice existed here finds in graves and houses attest the mand, while the exact games they played are reconstructed with care and caution. Everyone knows the pleasure of chance arriving in a tiny tumble. Someone rattles the cup once for the sound alone, then sets it down because strategy wants silence. Lamplight makes everything a little golden, except the shadows near the roof, which keep their respectable dark. The air has that faint soot sweetness. That means a wick was trimmed on time. The key ring on the hook by the bedbox gives a faint tick when someone leans past. It is the punctuation between turns. A hand near the hearth stirs embers. The dog sighs so professionally that two people blame their mistakes on respect for the sigh. You are handed a handful of attackers and told to try the other problem. Surprisingly, you enjoy being an obstacle. It is a kind of hospitality to offering a path so that it can be admired and denied. Your pieces advance in a gentle pincer, never fast enough to be unkind. When at last you trap a defender between your two men, the room gives the smallest approval noise, the way people praise a newcomer's accent when it finds a true vowel. The captured piece is set beside the board, not dramatically, but as if it has been reassigned to commentary. Time folds in on itself, in winter like good dough. 10 turns take as long as 3 stories. The game makes room for talk. What the fox did, what the ice wants, how the loom weight that cracked last year became 2 very useful pendants. A riddle arrives without warning, like a guest who knows the house so well they don't need to knock. I am the tongue of wood, I tie the road. I sit in snow and sing what am I? People lean into the playful fog of thinking. The answer comes to you while you pretend it didn't. The sled's runner, singing on cold paths. You offer it with due modesty, and are rewarded with a slice of dried apple from a jar that remembers summer. More riddles surface, traded in the same currency as bread and small repairs. Some are about tools, some are about weather. A few practice the old art of Kenning's poetic puzzles that nickname the world. The sea becomes whale road, the sun a sky jewel, the hearth house art. Lines take shape with alliteration, walking arm in arm down the sentence. Winter word, warm wall, wool weight. No one recites a whole law tonight, but you can sense how memory training lives in these games. Sources suggest assemblies counted on strong mouths more than ink. Evening practice kept those mouths ready. Dice claim the table when the board rests. A simple game. Nothing boisterous. Best 3 throws wins a small prize. The nicest corner of a blanket, or the right to put the good log on the fire. The cup's leather lip brushes the wood with a soft kiss. The dice tumble and stop as if obeying a tiny whistle only they can hear. 7 arrives twice in a row, and someone nods like a priest at a familiar prayer. There is no betting here tonight. The wager is attention, and attention keeps paying dividends. A quiet song breaks the surface of talk and then disappears, like a fish that wanted to check the weather. The singer isn't trying yet. They are seeing if the room is ready to lean. Child voices begin to soften. Laps gain occupants. Lids droop. A cat rearranges itself into a comma and declares the sentence must not end soon. Someone corrects an off-center lamp, and the shadow it throws makes a triangle across the table that looks for a moment like a sail. You try a verse because the room makes it easy. Nothing formal, just a string of sounds that find friends. Frost and foot and fur, loaf and lamp and longhouse. People nod. The knight approves. The game continues, and you finally cornered the king. Your opponent applauds the geometry and then points politely to the escape you yourself made with your last move. The king walks through it like a guest shown a perfectly placed door and settles on the corner where sanctuary resides. You bow to the corner, to the board, to the lesson in gentle hubris. Pieces return to their pouch with that satisfying click that wooden things make when they know they'll meet again tomorrow. Dice roll once more just to clarify the sound they intended to make all along. The cloth is folded and replaces the board as if remembering its earlier career as a table. People stretch in the unthreatening way of those who have been well entertained. By doing nearly nothing at all, your shoulders have forgotten to be furniture. The lamp's wick shortens a hair. The flame narrows. The room becomes more itself. Outside, Snow rubs one sleeve against the door and then thinks better of it. Inside, breath gathers in the slow, shared meter that games leave behind. Laughter settles into memory. In the space between the last move and the next custom, a throat clears once, gently, and the circle leans forward without being told. A singer clears a throat. The room leans in. The first note isn't a word. It is a line drawn in warm air, low enough that your ribs feel it before your ears agree. A second note answers, and the room leans toward, the sound like seed toward light. The singer sits where lamp and hearth share the work. Their voice starts close to a whisper and grows only too comfortable, as if not to wake the sleeping, Tools. A simple Hartmore lyre than orchestra rests on the knee, its small frame polished by winters. Fingers find the strings with a bone pick, then abandon it for fingertips when the room proves gentle. The first song is a pathfinder, testing the draft, the patience of wicks. The distance a syllable can travel here. Words arrive in pairs, then in trios, bound by alliteration that walks you forward by the hand. Househeart, winterwise, snowsong. The music is only a scaffold. The real work belongs to memory. Stories live in mouths tonight, as they often did. Sources suggest that assemblies in milder seasons kept a person whose job was law, carried in breath reciters, who could summon rules the way other people summon kin. In this room, that long public rhythm becomes personal. A line about a boundary is recast as advice for the bench. Share, repair, ask. Names begin to weave in, not heroes only, but a patient parade of kin. This one, daughter of that one, who married into the next valley, whose brother traded for salt 2 summers in a row and never cheated his measure. Genealogies are less a ladder than a net. They hold you without lifting you into arrogance. You feel sleep tug on the child beside you precisely when the 4th name in a string settles into place. That is how it works. The names do their duty and also turn into lullaby. The harp plucks a smaller pattern, a circle of notes that feels like a good clasp. A travel tale slips in through that loop. A trader's winter, ships beached and tarred, goods counted by the comfort of pairs, 2 bolts of homespun, 2 rings, 2 jars that smell faintly of faraway sun. He speaks of rivers like braided hair, of a town where the market is a clock with no hands open when the fish arrive, closed when they don't. Nobody here needs the geography fixed with pins. It is enough that there are other hearths that count time by boiling and singing, same as this one. A pause, and the law returns, but softer. The room accepts a rule the way a blanket accepts a fold. When compensation is mentioned, it is in the tone of a ledger that prefers balance to drama. When penalties are implied, the language stays respectful and brief. Harsher outcomes exist, but we let the verse walk past them without detail. You do not feel lectured. You feel included in an old agreement where words keep neighbors from becoming puzzles. The singer nods toward a lad who knows a verse about winter work. He rises, straight-backed from pride and from bench geometry. His piece is mostly a list: hay turned, ice broken, rope dried, skis waxed with a mixture. His uncle whispers, and everyone knows, the list is art anyway. The power lives in cadence, and in the trick of placing 2 things together that teach each other. Grain asleep, dog awake, lamp low, law high. When he finishes, his mother's grin is a sunrise hidden under a hood. Strings change hands. A woman with a voice like spun butter sings of a summer field that learned to live inside a winter coat. She folds in a kenning or 2 for joy. The sea is awake, the moon a night bowl. The loom a wool river, tied to stone weights. The room hums approval at each small surprise. Someone adds a line when her breath invites it, a chorus unplanned and still inevitable. The hearth answers with a pop-like affirmation. Now, the singer tells you where these stories will go when this room sleeps. Nowhere exotic. They will cycle tomorrow to the neighbor across the stream, change a word to fit another bench, return in spring taller by a detail. Centuries hence, on another island, scholars will set ink to some of these lives in careful prose and call them sagas. Some will be long. Some will be more about law than any one life. Some will braid travel and kin in winter, as if they had watched tonight. Scholars debate which lines are older than the ink, and which grew new inside that writing. It is all right. Tonight's version is small, domestic, and correct for the hour. The harp rests. A different instrument wakes a boxy lyre with fewer strings, bright as a spoon on pottery. Its voice is a companion to walking. The melody goes evenly, as if keeping pace across snow that accepts your foot and returns it politely. Over that rhythm, a story about a meeting place gathers. The place is not named. It's simply the field where words are weighed. You can see it, ground less muddy than most. A circle of listening, a speaker standing where wind will not steal syllables. The tale is not about the dispute, but about how, afterward, people ate from the same pot and remembered to bring wood. The law is not excitement. It is a quilt. Children drain of wakefulness. Someone draws a cart line with a fingertip on a knee, and a little one follows it to sleep. The dog resettles with a grunt that makes 3 adults grin into their collars. When the singer pauses for a sip, silence fills the room quickly, not like a rush, but like wool lofting when unrolled. You hear the rope creak in the roof, the soft tuk-tuk of loom weights, stilling after a draft. The house has its own music. The song only pointed to it. You are invited to contribute a morsel. You offer a few lines, clumsy in your mouth, until they decide to help you. Frostfare, Firefather, fjord fast playful sounds that bounce down the bench. The room accepts them as if you had brought a second loaf. You are lighter for speaking. The song absorbs your attempt and turns it into the kind of memory that improves with retelling. Another verse returns to names, not famous ones, just the necessary thread, who is kin to whom, who keeps which hill path clear after wind, who knows the star that tells when spring will commit. A grandmother corrects a noun with grace, and the correction becomes a blessing. Now the name will stay stitched in the right place. You notice how gently authority travels here, by accuracy, by kindness, by the ring of a key earlier against a belt, by a voice that knows exactly how long a winter evening can be. The last song of the set lowers the ceiling a little, making the room smaller in the pleasant way. It tells of a traveler waking under a boat turned into a shelter. A spark scrapes from flint. The first smoke tries its 3 tricks and then behaves. The traveler thanks the sky for staying, thanks the sea for resting, thanks a bowl for being enough. Everyone nods as if they have stayed under that boat at least once in a nearby dream. Lamp halos soften, wick threads whisper. The singer plucks one final note and lets it fade like a path under fresh snow. Conversation resumes in eddies. Not currents. Breath moves together without rehearsal. Snow hush deepens. Someone trims the wick. A door will lift, and the sky quiet watching will have its turn to speak. The cold signs your cheeks and asks nothing else. The door lifts. A thin line of air writes across the floor. Outside, the night wears its softest brightness. Snow receives your boots with a tidy crunch like good paper, and the longhouse exhales you into almost light. The yard is legible, sled at angle, byre dark and warm, woodstacks like well-behaved books. Stars pour in until roofs and fences look borrowed from a story that prefers accuracy. Breath rises, forgets itself, and joins the air. Even the dog at the threshold decides the tale is complete without him, and curls back into his lamp-shaped circle. Then the north lifts. A faint veil brightens and folds, the slowness of someone smoothing linen. Pale green tastes its own name. A thread of pink appears, then green again. The aurora is not a march, it is a rehearsal. Traditions in many northern places called it paths and glints and signs. You call it friendly weather for the soul. Stand where the byre wall keeps a memory of animal heat at your shins. The cold is clean, not cruel. Knees loose, shoulders quiet. You watch the curtain practice. Kindness. It thins to nothing, returns elsewhere, and moves along the ridge, as if tying the longhouse to a larger tent. Behind the show, older lights keep their appointments. You find the ladle, the 7 stars, later tongues called, a wagon, a cart, a wain. Its pointers lead you to the polestar, that modest nail the night agreed upon. Loosen your gaze and other shapes assemble. A belt of bright stars suggests a distaff. A tight cluster becomes penned sheep. Names shift by century and valley. Usefulness stays. A neighbor joins you with a listening walk. They point with a mitten. That pale blur, Milky Way. Some say later, Winter Road. Others still say a sky avenue that keeps you oriented when ground and sea turn to sameness. To go anywhere, put that road there, the sea here. Check the sky nail twice. Sources suggest travelers used a chorus of clue stars, wind, water, color, the taste of air, the angle of swell under calm. You mention stones that supposedly find the sun when clouds refuse. The neighbor smiles. Scholars debate them. They say, crystals that split light and reveal a hidden direction, perhaps calcite or cordierite, perhaps only a lesson disguised as a rock. Maybe some sailors used them, maybe none. Either way, the advice remains kind. Look for order when brightness hides, and carry more than one compass. Clouds keep their distance, stars stay plain. The aurora threads a banner over the ridgepole, and hangs there as if blessing the house for doing winter correctly. Snow gives back light with admirable thrift. Your boots write a short paragraph and stop. Frost collects on your sleeve like fine sugar and refuses to move. You touch the byre plank and feel sleep on the other side. The warmth there is not yours, but it includes you. Walk to where the yard relents into field. The sky is larger here, though the stars have not changed. Practice the very old skill of standing and looking. Minutes take on wool's habit, stretching without tearing, warming as they lengthen, lying down when asked. The aurora shifts toward thread, away from cloth. Green fades to the memory of green. Edges dissolve. With the show dimmer, other things come forward. Faint stars you had ignored, your breath choosing a slower meter. The cold, having proved its point, becoming merely correct. Law keeps quiet, unless asked. Someone tells a neat line about 7 bright stars being oarsmen or a bear's cart, depending on grandmother and coast. Another remembers a saying, if the winter road stands straight, weather may do the same. If it bends, so will travel. Not prophecy, memory, wearing poetry to stay memorable. Look back at the longhouse. Its smoke seam writes a softer line than the aurora, but does the same work, sending a message about warmth and order, and people who know how to keep both. A lamp shows through a seam and does not waver. Tonight you stand between kinds of light, and both choose gentleness. Turn toward the door. The path remembers you. Leather hinges speak in their syllables. The latch lifts without argument. Before you cross, look north once more. The veil has thinned to rumor. The nail still holds. The winter road remains where it should be. Gratitude feels simple enough to be true. Take one slow breath and carry that road inside. Warmth returns in a step, bringing wood and wool and a little sweet smoke. Faces glow at soft settings. The dog sniffs your hem and allows that you have behaved. A cup finds your hands and teaches them heat again. You tell the child with wide eyes that the sky wore green. The child declares it wore a dress and spins to prove it. No correction is offered. Around the room, quiet work has paused without stopping. A loop of yarn waits on a peg. A bolt of cloth lies kindly across the beam. A shuttle rests with a crumb of wool under its nose so it won't roll. The sky just offered a story you could wear. It will become one, if threads keep their promises and patience keeps the beat. Inside again, looms speak of quiet wealth. Wealth here doesn't clink. It folds. It smells faintly of soapwood and smoke. And when you press it, it answers with a soft, springy patience. A shuttle whispers once more along its path, and stops, as if a good sentence had found its period. The loom breathes out. You lay a palm on the new cloth, and feel a kind of quiet arithmetic that winter understands. The bolt is lowered from the beam with ceremony that pretends not to be ceremony. 2 people grasp the width, one at each selvage, and sway it forward, so the tension leaves without sulking. When the final turn drops into the lap, it makes that pleasing thump you feel through bone. The cloth is plain woven and sensible, threads over under, as honest as bread. You see a border of small diamonds that says this house refuses to be dull, even when practical VAML. Someone says, using the word as if it were both material and promise. Sources suggest that in parts of the Norse world, this stout wool served not only bodies but bargains, measured cloth, handed over for goods, rent like dues, or settled accounts. Standards mattered. A certain width counted. A certain firmness of weave counted. A length might be judged by elbow to fingertip, by elstick, or by a handspan a community agreed upon. Not every valley matched every other, but the idea traveled. True, well-made cloth could. Speak in markets.u. Lift the edge to daylighting from the lamps, and read the evenness like a calm poem. Count threads in a thumb's width, no gaps, no boastfulness. The selvage is tidy, holding its border like a closed book that could be reopened tomorrow. A grandmother pinches the cloth and listens for the sound that means the fulling will go well. It is there, that little whisper like a wave far away. The loom has earned its nap. Work turns to finishing. Warm water waits in a broad tub. Plant suds make a mild, agreeable slip. The cloth is pressed and coaxed, not punished, rolled and unrolled over boards, trodden gently by careful feet that know how to make fibers embrace. Fulling shrinks loose spaces into alliance. You can smell clean green and a hint of lanolin. That refuses to be rushed. When the cloth is lifted out and hung along a beam, it drips winter rain indoors. The drips count like beads. Color choices here are sensible but not shy. Most days, cloth leaves the loom undyed, a soft range of sheep's own browns and creams that pair well with snow and work. Some pieces take on a thought of color. Woad's disciplined blue, madder's brick warmth, onion skin yellow that glows like frost under sun. Scholars debate exact recipes. Households keep theirs in hands and habits, and the results avoid drama in favor of staying power. Where the weather, the cloth seems to advise, don't argue with it. The bolt dries and thickens. Someone runs a smooth bone along the edges to persuade them flat. A measuring stick appears. It's not just familiar to the room. Length is recorded, not in ink tonight, but in mouth and memory. 2 lengths for dues. In spring, 1 for iron and salt, 1 for the new sail patch, 1 kept for children with a talent for knees. The key ring rises, the chest lifts, and folded wealth settles into wood with the gentle slap of a loaf's heel placed in a basket. You're shown older lengths, their stories still creased in the fabric. This one went to an assembly, came back half its size, and plus a small axe and a bag of barley. This one bought a winter of salt when the fish were clever. That one returned from a neighbor's loom as part of a wedding exchange, gifts that were more pledge than decoration. You note how much of a household's power sleeps in textiles, and how comfortably that power sits on a bench beside laughter. A neighbor arrives, stomping off politeness and snow. From their bag, a handful of iron rivets bright as punctuation, a skein of dyed yarn traded from farther south. Good news about a cousin's calf. From yours, a cut length measured fairly and folded into their hands with both palms, because that is how you hand over anything that matters. No weighing of coins, no clatter, just the understanding that careful work is a language and everyone here is literate. Quality isn't a speech, it's a grip. The neighbor tests thickness between finger and thumb and smiles without words. The exchange includes something you cannot see: reputation, that quiet currency that winter tends. Cloth that holds its line in the rain will be remembered in spring. Cloth that won't will teach a different lesson, and nobody prefers that curriculum. The bolt you helped finish will be talked about at the ford and the market and the doorway, where news is asked to take off its boots. Even cloth that never leaves home works for its keep. Strips bind tool handles, line chests, wrap jars so lids behave. Narrow bands braid into straps and belts. A baby rides in a sling that matches the pace of breath. A guest bed gains a layer that whispers of clean water and soapwort. Patches are not apologies, they are memories shaped like squares. A cloak takes a new edge and becomes next winter's good friend, finally introduced. You try a different arithmetic, count hours embedded in the bolt, the sheep's grazing, the shearing's quick patience, washing, carding, teasing, the spindle's purr, the loom's thock, the fulling's slow persuasion. You begin to understand why cloth would be trusted to speak in markets. It contains time that has already proved itself useful. It contains summer stored in a form that laughs at snow. Stories edge into the work, the way they always do when hands repeat blessed motions. Someone remembers a year when the ferry was late and cloth bridged the gap a length for butter and oats that saw a house through until the boat did its manners. Someone else tells of a dispute settled not with anger but with a measured gift, a length laid on a table like a period, not a fist rules wear many coats. This one is warm and widely admired. When the bolt is fully dry, it is beaten once across the forearm and answers with that friendly firmness you now crave. The selvages are even. The thickness speaks of winter's approval. Cloth is slid into the chest between sachets of dried mint and thyme, and the chest's lid goes down with the sound of a door closing gently behind a friend. The key ring gives one note authority's version of a lullaby. Later, the loom is covered against dust. The shuttle is tucked away with a crumb of wool to keep it company. The measuring stick returns to its peg with the confidence of a tool that will be wanted again soon. Your palms keep the faint perfume of clean wool, and your shoulders are the kind of tired that tells the mind it has done the right amount. You are rich tonight, in the way that leaves no anxiety in the pocket. Trade will happen in due time at the meeting field or the landing, when roads recall themselves and boats shrugged off tar. Tonight, the economy is domestic, a child wrapped, a draft tamed, a promise folded. You absorb the lesson without being lectured. Wealth, when it is woven, let sleep be safe. Save a corner for yourself. The room whispers. You earned it. Voices turn smaller as work folds itself away. The bolt's edge glows briefly in lamplight, and then becomes only weight in a chest. The pleasant kind that holds a floor steady. Hands. Rinse in warm water. The towel returns to its peg. Someone adds a split log and arranges it without hurry. With work set aside, everyone settles by the embers. Sleep is a craft here, not an accident. The room shifts its weight and becomes a ship. In harbor, benches the berths, rafters the calm dark above. One more breath from the hearth, and the whole house seems to tuck you in. Bed boxes along the walls open like friendly mouths. Lids fold back. Blankets breathe out warmth, saved during supper. The benches beneath are wood over storage, raised a hand or two above the earth, so drafts keep to themselves. Each nest is built with care and memory. Straw tick for softness, a fleece with its new winter, a woven cover that holds the body at the right conversation with cold. You sit on the edge and feel the weight of the blanket say, without words, "We have you." Feet find their way out of boots. Wool wraps itself into neat snakes and lies where morning will expect it. Belts loosen, knives travel to hooks inside bed curtains. A lamp, lowered, draws the edges of the room inward, so there are fewer places for the mind to wander. The walls, smoked and seasoned, give back a little heat they learned during the day. A dog chooses the strip of floor between the door and the nearest bedpart sentinel. Part cushion and yields a sigh that says the world can attend to itself for a few hours. An infant swings in a cradle that understands winter. A little boat, of wood hung from a beam, so movement can be invitation rather than effort. The string and hook squeak in a language so soft it puts itself to sleep. A mother's palm rides the cradle's arc for a minute or two longer than necessary, and then rests on her own chest, a hand remembering its job. The baby's breath joins, the chorus of small sounds the house keeps. Ember little exhale, will hush. Distant winds seem at the roof edge. The hearth is persuaded into night mode. Coals are gathered together and pushed under a quilt of ash banked against the draft, so they'll wake at a touch when dawn negotiates its return. One log, split small, is laid beside the stone where it can dry the last of its worries. The iron hook is lifted and set above heat's reach. Someone draws the ember bed's glow into a tighter oval with a stick, listening for the sound that says the fire is comfortable, not sulking. The smoke vent in the roof is adjusted until the ribbon climbs straight and thins. Air trades with night without pulling blankets from shoulders. The door becomes a promise rather than a rectangle. A thick board lifts into its bracket and settles. With a good, wooden note, a bar slides across, not like a fortress, but like a sensible coat. A second peg secures the latch, easy to lift from within, firm enough to insist on manners from without. The threshold receives a handful of snow to melt into obedient wet, so morning feet won't carry the night's glitter into bed. The dog watches this with agreement and puts his chin on his paws as if he personally invented the system. Families claim their corners, not with flags, but with habits. The older child sleeps nearest the wall like a bookend. Younger children share the middle warmth under a cover that remembers whose toes trespass. Elders take the easy side, where rising for nighttime needs won't wake knees that served all day. A cousin passing through finds the bench opposite the fire and smiles into the glow as if it were kin. Blanket weight tells everyone the same thing in different languages. You feel your bones settle into the grammar. Quiet rolls fan out. Someone is the last lamp friend, trimming a wick to a pinprick and putting a saucer over smoke so the dark arrives clean. Someone else is door listener, leaning their ear for a moment to timber and weather. Another gives the warm wall a friendly tap, reading the byre's contentment like music. The house prefers this to strict watchers, though on harder nights, a person may rise on purpose halfway to morning and walk the length, hands clasped behind, hearing the building hum. You imagine the soft sound of their steps, not a patrol so much as a lullaby with shoes on. Whispered talk lasts until it doesn't. It has the ache of good tired and the crispness of cold at the fingertips. The day is recounted in details that do not require judgment. The hinge turned kindly. The game where the king escaped. The aurora that wore a dress because a child said so, and a child may be right. Out beyond the door, snow redraws the yard. In a style called True North, Inside, your pillow rehearses the shape of your ear. The room never goes truly silent. A coal shifts its opinion and sighs. The roof timbers answer the weather with a language of minute creaks that means we remember. In the byre, a cow rearranges a sentence in hay and returns to thoughtful chewing. The sound travels through the partition like bass notes. The cradle does a half swing and forgets why. Your breath joins a choir where nobody knows they are singing and nobody needs to. If worry tries a polite knock, the house handles it. Door barred, dog content, fire asleep but reachable, tools where hands will look for them in dark, keys hung, with their tone already spoken. The brain likes checklists. The room offers a checked one as a bedtime story. You're safe here. That sentence has a weight equal to the blanket. The ceiling is low enough for comfort, but high enough for smoke. To get wise before you do, you watch a faint plume vanish into the vent's rectangle and think of the winter road in the sky, that pale path that reminded you of bearings. The same logic holds indoors. The vent is your house star. As long as the thread goes up, mornings will happen on schedule. You let that ridiculous but effective thought stand guard. While your mind looks for a softer job, dreams arrive with practical shoes. They are about useful things, ropes obeying knots, the sound of cloth becoming stronger under your hands, the particular laugh that happened when a riddle suddenly behaved. If a harsher image tries to file a request, it is sent to the porch to cool off. The mind is allowed to hold a light screenshot of the aurora shawl of green, ironed by Windand, tuck it into a pocket. You will check tomorrow and be pleased to find still there. Sometime in the middle of long night, you surface, enough to appreciate the order you sleep inside. The ember under ash blushes when shifted by the contraction of cooling stone. The dog opens one eye, not for danger, but to confirm that quiet has the correct temperature. Snow rubs one sleeve along the thatch and resumes being beautiful. You turn the pillow, find the cool side, and move one foot to the edge of the blanket to remind the world it may continue. A little before the hour nobody names. The room takes a breath. The last lamp friend stirs, sits, and makes the particular sound of a person who knows where the floor is. The bar lifts with the dignity of wood, doing precisely what it was made to do. Somewhere, water will be checked. Somewhere else, straw will be turned. The house will have its midnight care round the way a parent pulls a cover up without waking a child. You drift again, already knowing that when you next rise, the ember will answer. The door will give back the bar willingly, and the dog will pretend he meant to wake first. For now, the blanket remembers you. The wall shares its borrowed warmth, and sleepwalks with you to the hour when small chores make the night even kinder. Midnight doesn't arrive. It turns a page. The house inhales, then remembers a few small things it meant to do. A knee swings out of bed like a quiet hinge, and the floor receives a foot that already knows where the warm plank lives. The ember bed is a sleeping red map. You lift the hook that holds the pot chain and ease it aside so sparks won't find manners to forget. With a stick, you coax the coals together until their glow deepens from polite to helpful. A thin split goes on its edge, then another across. It like a bridge. The sound is not a crack. It is a soft acceptance. You raise the pot a link to keep simmer from becoming story, then lower the screen of ash where the coals nudge out. The smoke rises in a well-behaved line. The vent agrees. A log waits nearby, drying itself into tomorrow. Water is a creature of opinions. In a lidded bucket by the hearth, a skin of ice has rehearsed. You tap it with a ladle, knock, knock, and it relents into glass shards that melt with gratitude. A stone you warmed earlier slips into a second bucket too. Keep it from getting ideas. If the outside trough needs a visit, you carry a small covered lamp and a stick with a flat end to skim the surface. The film reforms as soon as you turn, but you have bought the animals a calmer hour. You cover the bucket again as if tucking a child, and tuck your own hands around the cup the stove has made warm. The byre door murmurs when you lift it. The warm wall answers with friendly breath. Inside, straw rustles like dry rain. You turn it with a fork, not all of it, just the places where sleep has settled too eagerly. New bedding lies within reach, layered from last week's labor, and you fan a clean armful into the hollow a cow has left, writing comfort in hay. A sheep noses your sleeve and finds only respect. You run a palm along a flank, reading the night's temperature in one polite stroke. Buckets make their small circuit. You do not describe the task, you simply do it, with tidy steps and a rope, looped the way your elders taught. Halters are checked, not because they threaten mischief, but because habit turns into ease. A calf startles at a dream, then forgets why. You stand still until the room remembers sleepy as a group activity. The byre is its own lullaby, slow chewing, breath like bellows learning to whisper, hooves adjusting grammar on wood. When you close the door again, the hinge gives back a note that sounds like night, and the warm wall returns your borrowed heat to the family side. Outside, the yard's edges glow with hoarfrost that behaves like embroidery. You step out with the snowpole and tilt your head at the roofline. The thatch has taken on a dignified burden. You coax a drift off the low EV over the byre with careful taps. The snow slides in a soft sheet and collapses like folded linen. You listen for the message boards, send up the posts after such a change, the brief settling that means thank you. Sky reads clear. Wind has chosen discretion. You put the pole back where hands expect to find it in the next weather. Wood is a conversation you keep current. From the stack, you bring in an armful that represents morning, choosing a mix of quick and slow, like a sensible sentence. The door yields and accepts, a practiced duet. Inside, you set the logs by the hearth, with bark outward so frost becomes memory sooner. A few smaller splits join the kindling basket, their ends tidy because earlier you agreed with the grain instead of arguing. The axe remains married to its block. You stroke the haft as you pass, a gesture that says, tomorrow. Tools, once staging the way a story wants, its first line. You check the sled runner you smoothed earlier. It answers with a shine you can feel. A coil of rope becomes flatter and kinder. A knot is laid out so it can enter morning knowing itself. If the path to the storehouse drifted, you step and stamp a ribbon wide enough for 2 shoulders, and a basket skis wait near the door, wax rubbed in a thin, correct coat that will remember direction when dusk returns to day. A small bundle of lamp wicks finds the mantle, braided and ready, because the future likes to see you thinking of it. The family sleeps in paragraphs. You edit the punctuation. A blanket edge rides up a child's calf. You pull it down with 2 fingers and a smile that survives in the dark. Someone coughs the cough of dry air. You pour a thumb of warm water, a bit of honey dissolved earlier, and offer it at the right height with the right hand. Keys hang exactly where you left them. You touch the ring lightly so its iron says its small word, and your mind doesn't write a list by mistake. The dog opens one eye to verify you are the kind of human who returns. The eye closes. Back at the hearth, you lean the ladle against the pot in the angle that means done. The ember oval is tighter now, bright at the core and soft at the edge, a little town under snow. The room has shrunk to its favorite size. You count the friendly variables. Door barred, vent clear, water persuaded, straw turned, wood recruited, rope ready. Outside the yard writes silence in neat lines. Inside, the benches do their impression of boats in harbor and succeed. If there is a thought left over from the day, the house puts it in a drawer you can't reach, and that is a relief. Your palms smell faintly of hay and smoke and the clean, animal note of lanolin that lingers from work. You step into your corner of warmth, and the blanket says your name without sound. A breath, then another, then a third, with longer edges. The longhouse matches you, the way good buildings do. You raise the lamp, pinch away the char, and let the light narrow into a dot you can pocket in sleep. The wick is trimmed once more. Silence returns. Somewhere in the loft, a twist of evergreen waits for its evening, and the thought of candles traveling across bread crusts tomorrow is small. Bright company as you drift. Winter brings green indoors. The house smells like a forest that learned manners. A sprig above the door changes the room's shape without moving a single beam, and everyone walks under it, as if walking under luck made visible. You wake to the rustle of fresh straw, and the faint sugar scent of beeswax being warmed between palms. Floors are strewn with clean reed, and a whisper of herb-sweet gale. A pinch of dried minso footsteps turn fragrant. Benches wear a thin shine, persuaded from wood by wool and a drop of fat. The hearth is brushed to its red bones, and rebuilt as if receiving a guest. Today will not hurry. Today will thaw the dark, with kindnesses counted and shared. a child carries, in the evergreen arms full of needles and pride. Resin prints little stars on their cuffs. The sprig is tied at the door lintel with red thread that used to be part of a braid. The knot gets patted by each passer, as if the house had a pulse there. Traditions vary. Some families tuck green into every corner, others keep just one bright point. Either way, the winter room looks newly awake, and you feel taller for standing. Beneath it, candles line up like small debates that end in agreement. Tallow for most nights faithful, a bit smoky, reliable as bread. Beeswax for this one honey sweet, slow, with a flame that moves as if it has a good teacher. Wicks are trimmed to the thickness of a promise. An older cousin demonstrates the art of catching a sputter before it becomes gossip, and a younger cousin bows to the skill. When the first candle is lit, the longhouse becomes wider without adding a plank. Bread dough is a snowball that remembers July. It rises near the hearth, yeast pleased with the company of other living things. The loaves that go into the oven wear slashes as practical as steam escape, and as decorative as a signature each household's mark. Sometimes a braid, sometimes a sunwheel, sometimes simple parallel cuts that look like field rows. When the loaves return, the crust crackles with a sound that can only be described as yes. Little hands learn restraint as butter waits in its crock for the proper moment. A pot of porridge becomes more pompous than usual, and everyone lets it. Dried berries, saved from a sweeter month, parade themselves across bowls. A slice of smoked fish decides to be generous and lends its story to the meal. A slab of roast, if the household has one, keeps its dignity without being described in detail. The important thing is that plates remember to be full, and talk remembers to stay kind. Ale is warmed with a stub of herb, and watered enough to keep voices gentle. Gifts here are work in polite disguises, a woven band that knows exactly how to hold trousers, a spoon with a bowl smoothed until soup will taste better because it chooses to, a tiny carved animal for a child who will later herd, its wooden cousins across a bench, a comb cut from bone, its teeth set with patience, a little bundle of dyed yarn, brilliant as a secret. The giving is the whole speech. No one needs to argue their generosity. You offer a small square of cloth edged last night, and it is received, as if it were both garment and weather. Neighbors arrive with snow still visiting their cloaks. The latch clicks, air folds, voices introduce themselves to the room. A length of cloth measured true is exchanged for iron rivets, bright as punctuation. A jar of last summer's berries is traded for a promise about sled repairs. When Thor teases the path, stories come with the parcels. A cousin's calf stood today. The sea looked thoughtful and then behaved. Someone insists the fox in the far field is actually two foxes playing at one shadow. Nobody presses the point. Rituals keep modest scale. A candle is carried around the room to greet corners that have done their dark duty. A toast is lifted not to conquest or longboats, but to roofs that stayed, walls that listened, hands that found each other in the straw storage and carried without complaint. You pour a small sip onto the hearthstone, not to waste, but to include. Traditions were not the same in every valley. Later centuries layered new calendars and church bells over old seasons in many places. The room makes room for both. A blessing that sounds like a soft thanks. A song that mentions a saint by name in one household and a star by name in another. Everyone accepts the kindness and lets details be local. Outdoors, a narrow procession likes to pretend it is not a procession. 2 lanterns, then 3, move from door to door with low song. Verse is traded for bread crusts, still singing, and for slices of cheese that crack like ice when cut. A child holds the basket with the official seriousness children bring to festive duty. Paths glimmer where other boots approved the route. A sled glides by, bells kept on purpose quiet so the night may own its silence. Back inside, the table becomes a map of familiar abundance. Butter rests under a linen cap. A dish of pickled cabbage remembers summer with a crisp dialect. A wedge of cheese breaks open like a book. Everyone reads. Someone cuts slices thin by principle and is teased for it, then continues because principles are allowed to be teased. A bowl of nuts makes the rounds and forgets to return. A cake made of what the pantry will allow, barley and honey. Perhaps a touch of ground almond saved for this exact evening wears, an icing of snow sifted from A bag of powdered not snow that somebody swears is a cousin's trick from far away. After plates, the quiet game resumes that involves wrapping. Gifts are folded in cloth instead of paper, fastened with a pin, tied with a braid that will be useful long after secret becomes seen. Wax is dripped onto a twist of thread to hold a roll of messages together. 3 jokes, 2 riddles, 1 kind. Instruction about feeding the chickens if frost forgets to be gentle. Children drowse in strange positions that flatter no pillow and insult no parent. The dog approves each shift with a blink that could be read as officiating. Doorways remember absent friends. A cup is lifted and a name is said without explanation. The room holds the name easily, putting it on a safe shelf. You notice how a feast here has a practical spine. Make ready, invite, share, remember, plan. Tomorrow an old person will walk the storehouse and note with satisfaction that plenty remains. Tonight, they simply take a second slice and nod to the keyring as if it had sung well. When candles burn down, they do it gracefully. No one chases the last drop of light into argument. Wicks curl into little black question marks. Wax collars form and are admired for their geography. Someone unknots the evergreen from the littail, strips a few needles into a bowl to scent tomorrow's washing, and rehangs the sprig because green is supposed to stay. The floor is strewn with good tiredness crumbs, a ribbon that escaped its duty, a wooden lamb sleeping on its back. A bell you didn't notice before gives one patient note from the hook where it lives. It used to help with calling meals, and tonight it helps with admitting that meals do end. The last plates are rinsed. Cloths are wrung and hung where warmth will finish the task. The house learns a softer sound. Breath falls into the same paragraph. Outside, the yard is lit by a moon that minds its business. Inside, the lamps shorten to tamed stars. It would be tempting to stay awake for the sake of staying awake. The room disagrees kindly. Blankets are found. Benches resume their birth duties. A child, half asleep, insists they can feel the evergreen breathing. No adult argues. You take a last mouthful of bread, crust singing even now, and decide to believe. In edible luck, the hearth is persuaded into a glow fit for dreaming. Sleep gathers its cloak. Only the snow keeps watch. Somewhere under the eaves, a frost feather grows its bright spine. And not too far away, the sky thinks about pale blue dot. Frost writes its name on everything and then underlines it. The first sound you hear is wood giving a polite creak as the roof shrugs at dawn. Steam lifts from a kettle before you even know you set water on to warm. The way a good house remembers your habits and runs ahead a step. The longhouse is dim in a friendly way. Edges softened until the day is sure of itself. You sit up and the blanket leaves a warm echo where your shoulders were. Your breath makes a small cloud and then forgets to be dramatic. Near the door, the dog stretches front to back and thumps his tail once, an applause for morning. A rooster speaks from somewhere behind the byre, but the sound has been folded in wool. Even the bird knows volume is not a virtue before breakfast. Embers wake like shy coals at a dance, brightening when you open the ash. You lay a small split across and watch it take, not with sparks, but with patience. Flame grows to the size of a fist and decides that is enough. The kettle finds its place above it. A slow thread of steam draws a vertical line that tells the roof vent everything is still working as designed. That line is your house star for mornings. Boots wait where you left them, thawed by the hearth and persuaded into flexibility. You tip them to shake out last night's dust and slide in feet that remember wool. Warm plank, step. A cup warms your hands after its quick rinse, and you sip the first mouthful long enough to trust the day. The lamp nearest the door is trimmed to a bright P and set aside. Daylight will take the shift soon. Before the door lifts, you practice the winter inventory by eye. Firewood, stacked in 3 tempers, cheerful, quick, honest, medium, patient. Slow water, lid on, skin broken, kettle promising. Tools, pegs and handles in their agreed stations. Keys, ring on the hook, tone memorized. The list calms the mind, the way walking calms a restless horse. You're safe here, and the house repeats it in the grammar of readiness. The bar slides back with its dignified note. Leather hinges breathe. Cold steps in but minds its manners at the threshold. Outside, rime has traced every straw of thatch, every grain of the fence, every loop of rope in silver. The yard looks newly carved, your boots speak in careful crunches. As you cross to the byre, when your palm meets the partition, warmth answers like a neighbor who got up before you and put the kettle on without bragging. Inside the byre the air is hosts and guests. Animals wake in segments. A blink, a jaw stretch, a sigh. You turn straw where it asked overnight. Check water with your knuckles. Greet a cow with the back of your hand, the local accent of kindness. The calf tries standing on a fresh opinion, and finds balance in one practiced breath. The cat patrols the rafters to see if dawn brought any news. It did not, except light, and everyone approves. Back in the hall, the kettle lifts its voice to now. Barley bread waits under a linen that still smells faintly of evergreen. You cut a slice that admits crumbs and accept them as compliments. A pot receives a little hot water and a handful of oats, or yesterday's broth's polite remainder. Breakfast is not theatrical, merely sufficient. Someone cracks the door again to let a new stripe of blue roll across the floorboards. On mornings like this, color is an ingredient too. You rattle the key ring lightly, and the household's day lines up without a command. Benches close. Bed lids drop with the sound of agreements. A spindle, left ready last night, glances your way like a pet that believes in walks. A measuring stick breathes where cloth slept. You step into boots and find your cap without looking. Hands remember where gloves live and how they prefer to be turned right side in. Order puts honey on minutes. The first chore beyond the byre is the path, a ribbon kicked wide enough for 2-1 returning with a basket, one going out with a promise. You stamp a rhythm that warms your blood and writes generosity for later feet. Rhyme snaps under heel like thin sugar. The sky, which rehearsed for hours, finally opens its hand and gives you a pale blue as serious as a vow. The fjord off beyond, the folds wears a skin of color that could be ice or simply the idea of it. You respect both without testing. Neighbor signs appear in the yard's edge. Tracks you recognize: boot, child boot, the erasement of a dog. The path to the storehouse nods approval at the shadow of your wood basket. Inside the storehouse, you check the grain by listening with the pomweight speaks. Lids answer. A sack is moved into usefulness, another is left to sleep. The iron key's teeth kiss the lock again. The lid settles with the kindness of enough dot. You carry a length of cloth from the chest to the window and hold it to morning. Light proves the evenness you learned with your hands last night. You understand again why such fabric could stand in for coin. It holds hours you can wear, labor stored in a flexible shape. There will be travel when roads thaw and boats remember their water meetings at the landing, bargains under a sky that smiles more honestly. You set the cloth back, the chest receiving it as if it were a good word saved for later. Breakfast expands, to include whoever wandered in with ungloved fingers and sincere greetings. A neighbor's nose is pink with freeze. Their news is cheerful and short. The stream ran, the sled behaved, a fence stood straighter after its talk with rope. You give a crust, they give a handful of nails bright as frost. The trade is civil, the ledger mental, the trust durable. Children strap on small tasks, sweep here, shake there, fetch a stick of kindling precisely as long as the rule allows. One child lists all the things the Aurora did last night, beginning with war, a dress, and escalating to told the moon a joke. No adult corrects mythology at breakfast. The longhouse agrees that good weather sometimes wears costumes. Work unrolls like a path. You've walked before and still enjoy. The loom asks for a new warp. The spindle acquires a fresh song. The sled claims the runner you polished. The door latch tries its peg and finds it exactly right. Food, stock care, craft, small rites, neighborliness, 5 fingers making one. Competent hand, it's unromantic, which is the romance. This is how winter becomes less of a story and more of a life.